Hey guys, Mr. Wiz here. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, we build video games. So I've already done an entire series teaching how to build games in MakeCode Arcade, and now I'm working on a series where we are building with extensions in MakeCode Arcade, and I've been explaining all these wonderful extensions that are available to us. Today, we are going to do Arcade Tile Utility. Before I do that, I just want to mention real quick that the arcade character animation would be the next one on the list, but I've already covered that at the very beginning of this playlist. I covered that because I felt like it's an extension that everyone should really know who builds games with MakeCode. So it was the first one that I covered. Okay, so today we're looking at Arcade Tile Utility. This extension is not one that I use very often, but it does have its usefulness. So we will take a look at the different things involved with that. Let me go ahead and click on it to download it into this program. I just have an empty starter program here for us, which I will build some stuff in to kind of show you what we're going to do. So the first thing I want to mention is that tile map stuff in the scene section. If you scroll down, there's a lot of tile map code already, right? So right here, we have the code where we're creating the tile maps. We have overlap code for things that happens in tile maps. We have all this stuff to adjust operations, and we have conditions that we can use for all sorts of different things. There's a lot of tile map blocks already is what I'm trying to say. With this extension, it just gives us a few extras that we can use to improve our tile maps even more than what's already available to us. Kind of think of this as kind of bonus features for tile maps. It doesn't really change too much, but it does allow you to do some things that would be difficult to do with just these blocks. All right, so tile utility opens up as a new section right here. It is. And you will see these are the new blocks that are available to us. All right, so first thing up here, we've got a couple new things. We've got this one, which just has to do with tile map stats, right? So we've got number of columns, number of rows, width, height, and tile width. So if there was something in our program where we had to figure out, based on one of these stats, or if we had to compare something, this is the bubble we would use for that. This one's an interesting one because this actually changes the tile map. The normal size tile map that we uses tiles that are 16 pixels by 16 pixels. The size of the tile map's up to you, but the tiles themselves are 16 by 16. That's what we've been using in all the other videos up until this point. This allows us to create a tile map where the tiles are 8 pixels by 8 pixels, essentially giving us a tile map with a lot more tiles. However, the tiles are going to be a lot smaller. It's going to be harder to get detail in each tile. So this is not a block that I've ever used or really had a need to use, but you could if you wanted to, right? Then we have one for current tile map and clone, which basically copies an existing tile map. So one thing I want to say about this, I want you to notice these red bubbles. These red bubbles are for variables. Up until now, we've never used tile maps as a variable. So in the scene section, when you're creating a tile map, it's just set as the tile map. It has a singular tile map in your game. And the idea is that in your game, you're never going to have more than one tile map at a time. So there was never any reason to create a variable. Because remember, variables are things that change, right? Well, now with this utility, it changes things up a little bit. Now you will actually be able to create your tile maps as variables. And that's going to be important for a few reasons. Essentially, what it allows you to do is it allows you to have the tile map saved even when it's not being used. So if something changes on the tile map, it's going to save that change so that if you come back to it later, it still has those changes that you made. Pretty crazy, right? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. To demonstrate what we're talking about here, I'm going to create a couple tile maps, but I'm not going to do it the normal way that we've done before with this. I'm going to do it as creating a variable. So I'm going to go to scene, and I'm going to grab this bubble right here that just says tile map. Because I'm not going to use the 8x8, I'm just going to use a regular one since I'm more familiar with them. And they tend to be, easier to get good details. So I'm going to create a simple tile map here. I do want it to be the size of the screen. So let's make it 10 by 8. And I'm going to make like a little dungeon looking thing. So we'll put some corners and some walls, and I'll try to knock this out real quick for you guys so this video doesn't get too long. If I need to, I'll cut part of this and fast forward. So this is going to be my first room I'm making like a dungeon type scene here. And we're going to have the player come out of the entrance. So we'll make a door right here that they can come out of. And then we're going to make a door where they can go to another dungeon right here. So this will be my first tile map. And in fact, let me change the name. Since I'm going to have multiples, let me rename this to tile map 1 so I can tell the difference here. And then we're going to make another one for tile map 2. Now, here's a little piece of advice. Whenever you duplicate tile maps, if I edit this tile map, we're going to have a problem where it's actually going to edit both of them. So watch out for that. Whenever you duplicate, it's always better to just grab a brand new tile map rather than edit it, because I don't want to change the original tile map. Now, I do want to use pretty much the same layout, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the selection tool to copy what I made in the tile map 1. Oop, let me move my head out of the way here. Try that again. So I'm going to copy what I built in tile map 1 with Control-C on my keyboard. And now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to change the size again to 10 and 8. And I'm going to Control-V to paste. There we go. Now I can edit this, and it won't affect the original one because this is a new tile map. All right, there we go. So I've got my 2 tile maps here, and the idea is, actually, I don't think I need a door here. Let's get rid of that door. The idea is I want my character to be able to walk from one tile map to the other tile map. And I want any changes that happen to be saved in these 2 different rooms of this dungeon. So that's what we're going to be doing with this tile utility extension. All right, I guess I should create a player too then real quick here. So let's go ahead and make our player. And I'm not going to worry about animating him or anything because that's not the focus of this video. But hopefully you've watched my other videos and you know how to do that. Okay, ooh, so first thing, I want you guys to notice there is no tile map on the screen right now. I created 2 of them, but it's not showing any of them. The reason is I basically saved these as variables, but I'm not using any of them. So to use it, I need to go back to scene. I need to set tile map 2. And in this bubble here where I would normally put the tile map, I'm going to put the variable for the tile map I want to spawn. There we go. And I'm going to use the existing tile that we already know to spawn the character on the door at the bottom. So he's going to start at the bottom there. There we go. All right, so I've got the beginning of my game here. The character can walk around, and I want him to go to the door, which, if once I code it correctly, should take him to the other room. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so we talked about these. Down here, we've got some blocks that allow us to change the tiles, right? So we have cover all tiles with. This is covering one tile with another tile, okay? Then we have cover at a particular location with. So you have that one as well. And then on each, and this is a tile, create sprite with image of kind player. I like this block a lot. This is a great block that you can use even if you don't use the other features in here. Because when we go back to the original tile map blocks, there's some where you can spawn on top of random, right? So like, let's say I had enemies in my game. I could have them spawn at little spawn points that I create on my map. But what this block allows us to do, it allows us to put one on top of every one of those tiles, on top of each of them. So maybe there's a part of your map which is a literal base, and this base spawns enemies. Well, I could put this inside of an on-game utility, and I could actually have enemies spawn from there every single time. That's dope. That's really dope. In fact, let's try it. Just to give you an example, let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to change my tile map a little bit, and we're going to create a spawn point for enemies. What should we make this look like? Make some green orbs. Woohoo. So put one there. We'll put one there. I'll go to the other map, put a couple in here. And these are going to spawn enemies, right? So what I can do is I can put an on-game update, and I can set how often. Maybe every 1 second, maybe every 2 seconds. On each of these tiles, I'm going to create a sprite, and I can design it here. For this game, I'll just make it a ghost. And I have to set its kind, right? So every 2 seconds, it's going to create an enemy on that square. Now, here's the important thing I want you to notice. It didn't give any stats for the enemy. It also didn't name the enemy. So it's not creating a sprite the way we're used to creating sprites, right? But you can still give them stats. What you would have to do is you have to go over here to the sprite section, go down to on created. So on created of kind enemy, now I can decide what they're going to do. So when an enemy sprite is created, maybe I want to give him the follow block, right? And I can use this temporary variable sprite as the enemy. So when an enemy is created, its natural instinct is to follow my sprite. And it does that, and it's doing it very quickly. So let me slow it down. I'll make them slow so it doesn't hinder our game too much here. Right? So there we go. So every couple seconds, it spawns. That's a lot of them. Let me make it slower. So every 5 seconds, those little bases will spawn a ghost. Pretty cool, huh? And it's going to do it on all my tile maps. So once I figure out how to transition from one room to the other, it will do it there as well. Okay, let's keep going. So I really like this block a lot because it's not random anymore. It's doing it on all those tiles that you tell it to. All right, this one replaces all tiles with another tile. So this is interesting. I want to talk about this. This block says cover all tiles with another tile. This one replaces all of those tiles with another tile. What's the difference between covering and replacing? So this is new to this extension. What covering does is it looks like it's replacing the tile. To the player, it's going to look like it was replaced, but that existing tile is technically still there. So you could essentially have a tile that is a trap, but looks like the other tiles that aren't a trap. You following me? So this allows the game to work in a way that's different than what the player sees. So you can still have tiles acting in certain ways, but the player doesn't see them because they are covered. Whereas replacing, it's no longer there at all, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Set walls on or off at all of those locations. That's kind of cool. So if there's a particular type of tile that you want to always be a wall or you want to always not be a wall, this is a good block for it. You could also have it change in game. For instance, I had a student one time, they had a bunch of lava in their game, and the player was able to pick up an item that made them immune to lava. So when they did that, basically the way that they had it set up originally is they had the lava set up as a wall, and they used the block that says when player hits a wall at location, then they used some logic in here that said if that wall is lava, deal damage, right? But once they turned the walls off at all the lava blocks, the player could then walk on them fine, he was safe, everything was good, right? So that's one way you can kind of set this up, is you can have things turn on or off even in game for when a player has access to them. All right, set a tile at a particular location in my tile map. So here's what I was talking about earlier. You can change the tiles in the tile map, and you can have them change permanently, right? So that way, if you leave the tile map and you come back to it, it'll still be different. All right. Set wall false. So this one, you can turn a wall on or off at a particular location. And then these two are conditions that you would use in a logic block. Tile in the tile map at a particular location is that, or the tile in a tile map at a particular location is a wall. So these are conditions you can use for logic, right? Okay, down here, for each tile in current tile map with column row or location. So this one, I'm trying to think of when you would use this. I don't think I've ever actually used this block. For each tile in current... Oh, okay. So this is if you want something to happen to every tile in a particular part of your tile map, right? So it could be in a particular row, in a particular column, in a particular location. You have to set it up, the code, pretty uniquely. So that's a little bit advanced. All right, down here, events. On tile map loaded. So that means when the tile map opens, right? Is there something you want to happen every time the tile map opens? Is there something you want to happen every time the tile map closes? So these are important things. Unload current tile map. All right. Then we have connections. This is kind of the unique part. We've never really had anything quite like this. What these blocks allow us to do is create what they call doors, basically a tile that helps you transition from one tile map to another. So let's go ahead and talk about how this is going to work. I'm going to grab this block right here, and I'm going to put it in my onStart. So after I create the two tile maps, I want to connect those two tile maps by something that they're calling door 1. Okay? Now, door 1 is not technically a thing until I make it a thing, but we are connecting these two tile maps. There will be something that allows us to transition between these two tile maps. But what we're going to do is we're going to create our door now. So you might think, well, I already have a door. It's right here, right? Yes and no. The problem is the door needs to be the same tile on both sides. So when you download the tile utility, it does give you some new pre-made tiles right here. So sometimes you can use these to help you just as a visual, right? So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these that says door 1, and I'm going to put it right there. And I have to use the same tile on both of my dungeons, or both of my tile maps. So that's going to be important. And over here, I'm going to put that same tile right there. So that's going to be the door that transitions between them, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that is working correctly. So what we want to happen is when the player overlaps, so this we're using some of the original tile map code now. When the player overlaps with the door, we're going to load the tile map that's connected by door. So basically, if you're on tile map 1, it will load tile map 2. If you're on tile map 2, it will load tile map 1. Make sense? So whichever one you're touching, it's going to swap you to the other tile map. So the one problem we're going to have with this is that you see the player's position is not changing, right? Which is kind of weird. We really want him to spawn outside the door when he transitions. So when I go into this room, I should be spawning right here. And when I go into that room, I should be spawning right here. Also, you'll notice the enemies aren't disappearing. So they're staying the same in every room. So that is something that we need to fix as well. So a couple little things here that we need to fix. Let's see if we can fix the enemy thing real quick. I'm going to put on tile map unloaded. So when we switch tile maps, I want, and I'm going to have it to destroy all sprites of kind enemy. So when I leave the room, the enemies should get destroyed. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so now we've got a couple new enemies in here. And if I go back to the other room, yep, okay, so that fixed that part. So now I need to fix it so it spawns outside the door. All right, let's look at our tile utilities options again. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking I'm probably going to do. I'm thinking let's grab the tile map that spawns on a particular tile. Now it says on random, but keep in mind there's only one door 1 right now, right? So it's going to load the tile map, and then it's going to spawn me on that door. Let's see if that works. Okay, that kind of works. The problem is it's in an infinite loop of spawns now, right? It's infinitely swapping between tile map 1 and tile map 2. So I actually need it to spawn me in front of the door. So let's create a little logic here and move it around a little bit. All right, so it's going to load the tile map. It's going to put me on the door, and then if, which of these do I want to use? Current tile map, that's what I want. All right. If the current tile map is tile map 1, so this is tile map 1, I need it to move me to the left. So I need it to change my X position by, I'm moving left, so that's a negative X direction, right? And I'm going to do negative 16 because that's the size of these tiles. So if I move me to the left 16 pixels, I'll be standing on a different tile. All right, and then else. So this would be for the other tile map. And I don't have to put a logic condition in here because there's only 2 tile maps, right? So if it's the other tile map, which would be tile map 2, I'm going to spawn here. I want to move 16 to the right. So we'll do the same thing, but with positive 16. And I think that'll fix the door situation. Yep, there we go. So now I can easily walk back and forth between these 2 rooms. Our door is working correctly. Now, of course, the one negative is it doesn't look good. Now, could I create a door that looks okay for both of them? Maybe. But I really want the door to look like basically this angle for the one room, and I want it to have this angle for the other room. So I'm talking about different tiles. This is where that cover that we talked about earlier will really help us. So let's look at the cover block. Bum, 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 bum. All right, where was the cover block? This one right here. Okay. Let's grab, we put one for when it's unloaded. Let's grab for when the tile map is loaded. For when tile map is loaded, and I'm going to use something similar to what I did here with the current tile map. So when a tile map is loaded, if the tile map is tile map 1, then I'm going to replace this with the other one, which isn't showing right now. If it doesn't show, the trick to that is just to quickly go into the gallery and throw a couple of them in here. Because if you throw some in here, it'll appear. Now you can always delete them later. So I'm just going to throw a couple doors in here to delete later. All right. So if the current tile map is tile map 1, I want to replace door 1 with this. And for this one, I am going to go ahead and use that because I might be adding more tiles to my game later. So if it's tile map 2, then replace that with this. There we go. And I know normally you don't have to do else if it's only 2 things, but like I said, I might be making this game larger, right? I might be adding a bunch of rooms. So it'd be nice to make sure I have them all labeled. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the original tile map, and I'm going to delete those 2 doors that I don't need anymore. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so you'll see on the tile map, it still says door 1 and all that. But in my game, it looks like the tile I want it to look like because it's covering the tile. It didn't replace the tile, it covered the tile. So now I can switch back and forth because underneath those door arches is the actual tile that is triggering the transition. And now I have a simple transition between rooms. All right, is there anything else that I want to look at with this extension? I don't think so. Oh, here, this one is for centering camera. Sometimes you might care about that, right? But I don't really care about that in this particular game. But you can always recenter the camera to a particular column and row if you want to, depending on the size of your map and all that jazz. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't show a change happening in a tile map that saves. So let's do that real quick. I hope I'm not making this video too long. All right, so I'm going to delete one of the bases. Now, I'm not going to build a whole fighting thing into this because this is literally just a demonstration. So instead of creating a fighting dynamic, I'm just going to create a regular when sprite touches tile sort of thing, right? So when the player touches one of these, it's going to destroy that tile. All right. So how do I do it for the correct tile? I may have to use another logic block like I used up here with the current tile map situation. So let's grab that down here. I'm starting to get, this is getting a little bit more advanced, but I think this will work. All right. So if you're in tile map 1, I'm changing the tile. Oh, is it going to give me a problem here? Oh, my tile map was never assigned, right, because it's called tile map 1. Okay. There we go. So if you're in tilemap 1, it's going to set that to an empty tile in tilemap 1. And then I'm going to do the same thing with tilemap 2. And once again, the only reason I'm not just using if is because I might build more tile maps later. If it's tilemap 2, set that in tilemap 2. Okay, so if I did this correctly, I should be able to destroy the spawn points just by touching them. And if I leave the room and come back, it'll still be destroyed. Let's see if that worked. All right, so I destroyed that one. I go into the other room. I'm going to destroy this one. I go back. It's still destroyed. It worked. Ha-ha! Huzzah. All right. And now if I destroy that, I leave the room. This one, yep. And now neither room has any spawn points. It worked. So that is a really good benefit of this extension, is because it's saving the tile maps as a variable. It's saving their information. So if you leave the tile map and you come back to it, any changes that you made in that tile map will stay if you use this sort of technique that we talked about here, right? You just have to change it at that tile map. So that's different than the original blocks, where you change something, it's changing it on the tile map that you're on, but it's not saving that, right? So this block, if you use it and then you change tile maps later on, you come back, it's going to go back to your original tile map probably. So this other way saves it inside the variable. I love this. I love this a lot. So this is great if you're using a big game with a lot of tile maps. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. I hope you learned something new. I learned some new things, so I hope you learned something new as well. If you did, please click that like button. If you make something using this extension and you want to show it off, click the share icon right here. Copy your link, put it in the comments for me, okay? If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends and family about this channel so they can build fun games too. I'll see you guys next time.